Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irlianna Samsara with StarSound Astrology, episode 201. And this is going to be about the astrology of October 2022. And before I get into that, I'm just going to share some thoughts about Hurricane Ian and such, and plus a great place that you can give if you want to donate funds to the relief efforts. And then I'm going to talk about the week ahead, and then just give a general overview of October. It's a very powerful month. The winds of change begin, right? And we have it's definitely going to be pretty intense, especially mid-October to like mid-November, I would say overall. That's going to be quite the ride, but I'm going to break it down for you so we can see what we can do here. Some great empowerment, and see the weather ahead. So just in terms of Hurricane Ian, obviously, first of all, I just want to thank you all for reaching out. Yes, I'm okay. It's a miracle. We did not lose our power. This is the first time I've ever not lost power. And the hurricane passed over, but no damage, no flooding. Unfortunately, as we know, Southwest Florida was very badly affected. Orlando, very badly affected. A lot of flooding, and really, one of the worst events. It's something like the fifth toughest hurricane, and in terms of like damage and size, maybe it could be the most costly. I don't know. It's just, Fort Myers, the grid apparently is down. It's not even like turning on the electricity again. Like there's no grid, there's no running water. It's really bad. So if you are feeling to donate, I have a let me go grab this for you here. Yeah, there's a great relief effort I always give to these people in times of disasters and such. It's called directrelief.org, 5 stars charity navigator. Most of their money goes, like virtually all the money goes to the actual relief efforts, not to the administrative salaries. They hardly make any money. They practically do this for free. They're amazing worldwide. You can designate it just for Hurricane Ian or whatever kind of relief work around the world. So anyway, I highly recommend them if you are interested. The other thing I wanted to share was, hold on, let me grab a picture of, just to show you the kind of, I know we've probably seen a lot of, unbelievable pictures. It took me hours and hours of, all I did after the hurricane, which is typically what I do, is just look at pictures. And I know we've seen some pretty bad ones. But anyway, I want to show you here. Okay, here is a picture of the flooding. So everything in blue is where the water came. This is land that was inundated in water it may have exceeded 6 feet. You think about that. Here it is, Punta Gorda. This is Southwest Florida. As you can see here, the path of Hurricane Ian. But the amount here, the entire city of Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Astro, Bonita Springs, North Naples, and Naples. Naples is one of the highest per capita income households in the country. It's got like one of the highest, most millionaires per capita in the country. At least they had that a few years ago, and I think it's still there. Well, what does money do in a time like this, right? Well, unless you got out of Dodge, but all of this land underwater. You can notice too, they always say if you're ever in a hurricane, you want to be if it's going in this direction, you always want to be in the northeast quadrant of the direction that it's going. I mean, away from the northeast quadrant is the worst. So that would be this side of Hurricane Ian, going northeast. As you can see, you can visually see the difference, how little of it showed up here. But meanwhile, here's where it all so much bigger. So anyway, I just want to share that in case you ever find yourself in a hurricane. God willing, you don't, but yeah, always try it if you have fate is in your favor. But anyway, yeah, it's just keep praying for these people. It's, with the grid being down, I mean, it's not even like turning on the electricity, like I was saying, it's just really, really, really bad. So our prayers go out to everybody there affected, and our prayers continue. And of course, it did also hit in the Carolinas and all, but this is going to take months to rebuild the infrastructure. Pluto in its final degrees of Capricorn. Yeah, right. It's crazy. Anyway, let's go to the weather, the astro weather for this week and this month. So the general overview for this week, and then I'll the general transits, walk through with that, and then I'll talk about the the month at large. Of course, it's eclipse month. It's huge. A lot of really important things are going to be taking place. So we start with Sunday, October 2nd. Mercury goes direct in its domicile, home sign of Virgo. So this is definitely good news for relief efforts, because Mercury governing communications and things going direct, it's going to be a lot easier. Of course, it'll take a few days before it really kicks in. It's almost like waking up out of bed and putting your feet on the ground, before you start walking, right? It's a little bit of a changeover, but it is good news. And now just 5 planets are retrograde. So by the end of the week, Pluto will station direct. So that's 4 planets. Will only 4 will be retrograde. It's been a lot over the summer. It's summer of retrogrades. We had 6 planets at one point up until now in retrograde. So that's a lot, where you feel like you can't move ahead, or things feel slowed. Now that Mercury is direct, we're going to start to feel a little bit more movement going on there. It's also the final square of the Saturn and Uranus, the final square of Saturn and Uranus, which has been a long, almost 2-year story. Outer planets squaring each other. It's what brought unfortunately, the Capitol riots. It's certainly this need to change, but like, how do we change, and recognizing and valuing and thinking outside the box, but also with a purpose. And what will create stability and sustainability for the long term, right? And so this final square is happening. It'll be most tight through this week and into next week, through Tuesday, October 12th. It'll be, at 18 degrees. So and then it'll start to pull away, right? So Uranus is a little further away, but Saturn will pull away, and so it is the most tight right now. So these themes are still showing up very powerfully. I think about the devastation when you saw those trashed houses that were mobile homes, like literally like right on the ocean front. And I think about, wow, there's a message. There's a Saturn-Uranus message. The Saturn, Uranus and Taurus is breaking up our comfort zone. And Saturn is like, think long term and think responsibly. So is it responsible with hurricanes and global warming and rising seas to have a mobile home park on the water, and this is like the universe saying, hey, it's time, like to go back and rebuild that would just be idiotic, honestly. It's like, but it's this tug of war between, I want my comfort and doing what's best for everybody. And, so this kind of thing going on. I just think it's interesting that the hurricane is showing us that, but this tug of war between, our values versus what is best for society in the long haul, and all of us, So anyway, final square. Also, we have, this week, we have the first, October 3rd, Monday through the 6th, we have the first Mars return of the USA. So this is a big month, not just because it's eclipses and the final square of Saturn, Uranus, and Mars going retrograde, as if that wasn't enough, right? As Mars is going retrograde, it's also the Mars return. And we get into this in more detail with if you haven't seen it already, Michael Bartlett, where I interviewed Michael Bartlett of Kepler College about Mars retrograde and Mars in Gemini. And we talk a lot about the USA chart. So if you hadn't had a chance to hear that, take a look at that. It is definitely worth listening to. But so this Mars retrograde is happening at the same time. It's mapped over the Mars return of the USA. So I thought that was very interesting. So definitely changes with our allies in 7th house in the USA chart. that rules relations with other countries and other leaders. Well, obviously Queen Elizabeth passed away, but we could be seeing more of that, as well as Mars goes through its retrograde journey over the next several months. But anyway, yeah, the first pass will start on October 4th, Mars hitting 21 degrees of Gemini, which is exactly where it is in the USA chart. And then it'll retrograde and hit that again around Thanksgiving Eve. And then it'll go direct again in March 6th. So there's a journey that we're going to take here around our ideas and our beliefs and narratives, and that we've told ourselves, that we've told in terms of our country, relations with other countries and leaders, so this is all due for a retrospect, in a reflection, right? And to reestablish and look at our goals. What goals do we want to achieve? Gemini being the marketplace, money and cash and marketplace retailing, merchants, and so this is definitely going to bring a lot of fundamental changes to these areas. October through October 10th, we have, which is, let's see, Mars is going to start squaring Neptune. So this is the first of 3 squares, right? So we have, as Mars goes through its dance, its Mars return in the USA chart, it's doing it as it's squaring Neptune. It'll square now, November and March. And what does this look like? Well, there could be some confusion around where we want to go, or being deceived, and being escapism, fantasy, illusions, escapism, with our thoughts and our dreams and our plans. And Mars and Gemini wants facts and rational goal making, and the overlay, the square with Neptune is like, well, what about our dreams? And so it's like there's kind of like this conflict that has to be resolved, and how to put things into action that are with our dreams, but also being efficient, with that T square with Mercury, Mars, Neptune, and Mercury all in this tight T square. We don't want to be impulsive or reckless. We want to be, we want to address things with efficiency and, with kindness, compassion. We think about the Neptunian Pisces energies, right? We want to think about others, like certainly, the people, here we go back to the hurricane again. The hurricane, there were these people, they kept telling there's 30,000 first responders out there working on the wreckage and sadly pulling bodies and things and helping and rescuing people. And they kept saying, please don't drive around in your car to check on your house or look at the wreckage. You always get these looky-loos, but it's dangerous for one thing. There's just, it's such a chaotic place. But if you think about that square, it's like, oh, let's think about others. So Mars and Gemini, it's like, my ideas, but it's like, no, it's in a square going, wait a minute, think about other people. What's going to be efficient? Mercury and Virgo, what kind of communications and connections do we want to make that'll create efficiency and service, and not about me? So you could get to work and, help rescue crews, but don't be selfish and like drive around and, just think about yourself. So that idea we could translate to our own lives. Like, well, how do we look at these things, our goals and our visions and our beliefs, and how can we marry it being like, we're not going to sell out, but we're also thinking about others, and we're doing it, we're engaging with our wishes and hopes and dreams and service, and we're engaging with, effective communication. And so looking at it in a very proactive way. So anyway, the full month Astro, what do we have? We've got a full moon coming up a week from now, Sunday, October 9th. We've got a full moon in Aries, which is at 16 degrees. And interesting, I'll certainly talk about this more next week, but it's a conjunct with Chiron. Chiron is, I think it's at 14 degrees of Aries. So, Chiron conjunction, there could be this a feeling around our sovereignty, healing that wound around, am I enough? My sovereignty. In the desire for the new moon, in Libra, now the culmination of that happens at the full moon. So in our desire to reach out and consider others, we also have to make sure we're not selling out, with ourselves. And so there's this delicate balance, and there could be some emotional upset around these things. Full moons always bring a lot of emotions up to the surface. It's around our comfort and our security and our family and our nurturing. And so standing strong, right, in that courageous Aries way, being courageous around, what brings us comfort, and bringing ourselves into this. We see how important it is to balance both, this desire for harmony and agreement, but not selling out and compromising. So there's this check-in, are we centered in our sovereignty as we are seeking peace? Are we centered? Because you can't, if you're not centered in your own truth and self, then when you're giving away the farm and trying to negotiate things, and then you feel ripped off, and that's a shadow part of Libra, of that new moon cycle here in Libra. We don't want to feel shut down or compromised, or like lesser than, all for the sake of peace, like that saying, peace at any cost. It's like, no, that's shadow Libra, peace at any cost. So the full moon is going to help us. It will be a good cosmic check-in. Are we selling out? Is there a right use of will? Is there a war of words going on? Maybe it should be constructive and not destructive. So these ideas are going to be coming up. Speak up passionately for our truth, but have an eye on peace. The sun, because it's in Aries, the sun is the exaltation ruler and triplicity ruler by day. And so in the bounds of Venus, so this is like, okay, let's shine and be strong and brilliant and creative and play nice, right? Bounds of Venus. We got to play by Venus's rules. Everybody play nice. No bad language. Anyway, so that's that. Mercury into Libra, the 10th to the 29th. Mercury goes into the sign of Libra. So this is definitely more energy for peacemaking and agreement and harmony. This is like, when you think about Mercury ruling the lungs and Libra in an air sign, it's like, okay, can we just it's just been in Virgo, that industrious, hardworking Virgo. And now it's like, whew, can everybody just take a breath? Can we all just come to an agreement and first breathe and then come to an agreement? It's certainly, thinking about, it's a great reconnection as we come back online with our broken things from Mercury retrograde, whatever didn't happen or misconnections, we can meld, smooth over those rough edges of whatever upsets we may have encountered. There's a place that we can come to that's in agreement and harmony for everybody. Monday the 17th, we have the sun is in a trine, a nice trine with Mars and Gemini. So again, this is shining light and assistance with the peace and the harmony coexisting with one's desire to speak one's own truth. So it's a nice help for that, for agreements and for our own ideas. Saturday, we have this outrageous Venus cazimi. I talked about it earlier, where Venus is in the throne room of the sun, exactly at 29 degrees. It's going to be really powerful, just past that square with Pluto, but that's going to be a really intense, wonderful potential for the divine feminine consciousness, this Venus cazimi in domicile with the sun there, the high priestess, you get your private audience with the queen. And that can really, I would say, great downloads around our self-worth, whatever gender we find ourselves in, or no gender. Self-worth is self-worth is self-worth. Talents, skills, self-worth, resources, our personal resources, our cash, like personal finance, money in the bank, these great moments of clarity that are available to us in that cazimi. I think cryptocurrency could be a real crypto moment too, as I've talked about in previous podcasts. It's squaring, Pluto's at 26 degrees, so it's just, so we're incorporating all this deep shadow patriarchal you know, like toxic male patriarchy kind of healing. And it's like this embodying these principles of fairness and equality in rebuilding our society and in rebuilding our own foundations of how we personally operate in the world too. So that'll be really awesome. Then we go into just 3 more things: the solar eclipse on the October 25th, and I'll talk more about that in depth later, but it's eclipse season, right? So about a week before the eclipse is when we really, 2 weeks even, I give it 2 weeks, you'll feel this, feels like storm clouds gathering, or like what I call it, the Maytag washer starts spinning, you know, so this is not a good time to be, you know, making major decisions, or whether it's like getting married or buying property. It's like, you know, when an eclipse is happening, there's things that you can't see, literally like blind spots, and they get revealed later, but it's definitely it's a reveal, it's a moment of it's not easy, right? The eclipses are like super new moons on steroids, new moons and full moons. So in the south node solar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio, we're looking at finances, investments, annuities, wills, estates, trusts, death, you know, death and what needs to die, and hanging on to old ways of control and manipulation and psychological manipulation. You know, this is a time where it's an exit point for those old energies, and whatever is holding us back like that, what we're afraid of, and afraid of confronting, afraid of the dark and afraid of the unknown. These eclipses are going to wake us up, depending on what area of your chart it's in. But we'll get more into that on another podcast. Anyway, we'll finish out the month with October 28th. We have Jupiter retrograde is going to go back into Pisces to dip its toe back in there. And it will go direct around, I think it's Thanksgiving. So for the end of October to end of November, it'll be in the sign of Pisces near Neptune, not exactly on it, but about 6 degrees away. So we will have a little revisit of that magical time that we had earlier in gosh, I can't believe spring, when we had the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. So it's another place, and it's another opportunity to go back and revisit, you know, what are our hopes and dreams? What kind of ideals, you know, depending on what part of your chart it's in, the ideal job or the ideal home or relationship. And we're looking to see, you know, wow, what now that we have some wisdom and we're in reflection about that, we can bring back these dreams and hopes or rework them. And so I feel that hopefully, I'm thinking about too, the war in Ukraine started when Jupiter was in those late Pisces, which obviously, you know, could be, and as it was, unfortunately, a lot of tragedy and suffering, you know, with Pisces there. However, it looks as if there's been huge reversals with Putin's war. So, you know, hopefully we'll see an end to that conflict. I mean, gosh, you know, that would be really miraculous. So maybe there's some divine grace there for us for this process to keep going, where they won't do this anymore, you know. So we're just gonna, you know, keep our fingers crossed, keep praying, hoping for the best. But I would say in general, in terms of our own lives, Jupiter and Pisces, I think about higher wisdom with Jupiter, what is, you know, one's truth, and these cosmic transcendental experiences that can really open doors for us and open us up to levels of our consciousness that we have never seen before. So we have one more chance at that for this late October to November. So we'll feel it, you know, when it changes signs, goes from 0 Aries back to 2959 Pisces. By the way, it's conjunct Sheet, the fixed star Sheet, which is this opportunity to really, gosh, you know, heart on your sleeve, like be there for other people, take care of others, not in a way, I have to be careful, we're not enabling or saving or martyring, because that's the dark side that could come up, being a martyr or a savior or a fixer. But we can look at it in terms of certainly selfless service. We could focus on that, and really, and using our bhakti, our devotion to the divine, to create, you know, music, poetry, art, inspiration, dreams, journaling. It's all this like really, really rich material at that time. And the last thing is October 30th, in the middle of the eclipse season, where we got the lunar eclipse November 8th, Mars goes retrograde in Gemini. And again, I've talked about that. You can look at previous episodes to Michael Bartlett and I. And it goes at 25 degrees of Gemini. And so there's this stepping back about goals and ambitions and beliefs. And anyway, the thing that I've never mentioned before is that I found out that Mars is out of bounds from right before it goes retrograde through May 3rd. So even though Mars will go direct around late January, I can't remember exactly the date, but January 12th, I think. Hold on, let me take a look real quick. Yeah, January 12th, Mars will go direct at 8 degrees or so, Gemini. And even though it will be going direct, it'll still be out of bounds. And so out of bounds means that it's out of a, 23 degrees or so declination. And so as a planet moves through the ecliptic, what we don't always realize is it's not just moving in a straight line. It actually, and I give the analogy of a like a carousel horse, where how certain horses, they stay still, but the fun ones is the ones that go up and down, right, as you go around the merry-go-round. So that's kind of like a planet. It goes up and down and around and around. So as it goes through all the signs of the zodiac, it's not just going, it's going like this. And occasionally when it reaches those boundaries, is it 23 degrees and 27 minutes, I think it is, when it goes above that 23-degree point or below the ecliptic on that, it's considered out of bounds. So it has this very kind of unstable, chaotic element to it. And Mars goes out of bounds more than any other planet, only like 17% of the time, but it can be a very jolty kind of retrograde-ish feeling because things are shaken up. If you imagine like a basketball that goes flying into the audience and the bleachers, during a game, and so it's out of bounds. It's not playing according to the rules. So it can give a very wild card aspect to these months, these several months, right? It's not till May 3rd that it leaves out of bounds and it goes back to its normal range. But what do we take from that? Well, it's certainly an important, it's something to consider in terms of the good part of it is some really outrageous ideas can be birthed. It's like being and moving outside the box. I think it was Albert Einstein. He had not Mars, but I think he had the moon out of bounds in Sag. And he used to say, what was that famous line? Like, the things that we create, the problems that we created can't be solved with the same thinking that created them, something like that. Well, yeah, Sagittarius, right? It's about boundless imagination. So he was very comfortable with this boundless, the sense of being, this boundless worldview. So I would say that, Mars and Gemini is certainly in out of bounds, is like, wow, my teacher at Adam Ellenbaas, he was a tutor. He was Adam Ellenbaas, and then 3 years ago, he changed his name and he took vows in the Bhakti yoga tradition with the Krishnas, the Krishna community. And he just announced, and probably some of you heard if you follow his channel, he announced that he was leaving the Krishna community and going back to his old name, Adam Ellenbaas. So there's there it is, Mars and Gemini, in live coverage, and so moving in a new direction with names, right? Gemini, Mercury, names, communication, new beliefs, right? So he did a pivot. So we're changing our mind and changing it again, and with retrograde, changing it back. So I think we'll see a lot of. I think that probably we'll see a lot of religious. People who are religious or spiritual. I knew this several months ago. I'm like, wow, we're really going to see there could be people, who would leave the church or whatever religious institution they may have belonged to. We see a lot of that, all kinds of things. Actually, let me see, where did I put that piece of paper? But oh yes, here it is. What happens goals change, travel changes, travel plans change. United Airlines said they were leaving JFK. You know, they're not going to fly there anymore. I'm like, wow, that's pretty massive. So you could see a lot of airline policy changes, new directions, new goals for the airlines. Gemini being an air sign, right? Minds and beliefs change, one's intellect, one's ideas. Data, we might find new data and new facts and information that are discovered that may be about the pandemic because new information, you know, very possible because Mercury, Gemini rules the lungs. So, you know, when you think about airborne things, you know, that's one area that we might discover new information. Athletes, you know, think about Mars being athletes or soldiers. You know, there's this notion of maybe burnout and rest. Maybe you'll hear stories around athletes that need to take a break or resting or needing a rest. I know that the soldiers were in the war with Putin, you know, the Russian soldiers, the Times intercepted all these text messages and found these soldiers were saying, we're fed up with Putin. And, you know, you can see all this playing out. Needing a rest and, you know, not wanting to participate anymore. You know, on a mystical level, you know, you could say on a really mystical level, Mars retrograde in Gemini could take us into a whole nother, you know, outrageous telepathic dimensions of thought, liminal space, since Mercury, Gemini, ruled by Mercury, is the god of liminal space, the space in between dimensions, right? There's this dimension and there's this, and then there's a space in between. And you know, where do we want to go with that space in between? It's kind of like where all the magic happens. So this could be a really cool time. You know, we don't have to look at it also as like this war of words and chaos and violence. It's like, why, you know, maybe there are people who might get involved in that. You know, we don't want to certainly be, you know, leaning into that, but yes, knowing that undifferentiated people with that have some work to do might, you know, react and move in that direction, but there's also these higher planes that we can engage in. So I really like the idea about, you know, mystical engagement with other realms of thought and the mind, higher mind. I'm thinking too, you know, just, you know, you hear like, I think UFOs, you know, I know there's this new, what's the new acronym, UAPs or something, unidentified aerial phenomena. Ugh, such a boring name, UAP. It just sounds like some kind of like, I'm on a new insurance plan, it's called a UAP. Yeah, come on, let's be a little more imaginative. So anyway, UAP, forget it. UFOs, we might be finding some, and especially that square at Neptune. It's like, wow, what just crossed my path? What was that thing? Was it a weather balloon? No, maybe somebody will, like, you know, fly in and out of another dimension and, you know, come back and share about it, or we'll do that in our dreams, or maybe while running and exercising, we could have this otherworldly, who knows, you know, it's like Mars is out of bounds. Anything could happen. I think about, like, you know, when you hear about a plane that, you know, the Bermuda Triangle, where people, like planes and ships and all have disappeared and then reappear, or maybe they never show up. And it's just weird, you know. Actually, when Mars was retrograde in 2014, remember that airline that went missing and they never found the airliner again, the Malaysian Airlines? I don't know, it just like disappeared and off the radar. Like literally, they never found the black box. You know, that's a real Mars retrograde kind of thing, you know, like disappearing. Hopefully, I don't know whatever happened to them. It's just such a mystery. You know, we never got an official story. It's just remained a mystery, but flying off into new directions, we could say, in a way that's, you know, completely out of the box, you know, and could be a really exciting way to use and engage Mars retrograde. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. That's my wrap up for the month of October. I hope you've enjoyed this and gotten some value out of it. As ever, like, share, subscribe. We're very grateful. We've hit over 500 people. Yay. So thank you so much. And I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful month of October, full of transformation and delightful surprises. All right. This is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Speaks, StarSoundastrology.com. Thank you all for listening. Namaste.